Food is so scarce in Sudan that for months now, aid agencies have been talking in apocalyptic terms. That Sudan is facing the abyss of mass starvation. That an immediate surge, even a flood of food and medicine, is the only way to ease the suffering. But just when these people need help the most, the global humanitarian system is facing its greatest challenge. The United States, the world's biggest aid donor, has cancelled a massive chunk of its funding. This is how decisions made thousands of kilometers away can make the difference between who gets aid and who doesn't. Hello, I'm Darine Abougeda. This is Pinch Point, where politics and geography collide. In Sudan, right now, the political and geographical collision is threatening thousands of lives. Sudan is in the grips of a civil war. And to be clear, we could have easily devoted this episode to just the war. The fighting has been underway since April 2023. Some estimates put the death toll at 150,000, although no one knows for sure. And the civil war is part of our story. The fighting has forced more than 11 million people from their homes. The United Nations says about 25 million people, nearly half of Sudan's population, need aid. Add to that the arrival of famine and diseases like cholera. In 2024, the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, contributed 44% to Sudan's $1.8 billion humanitarian response. Then in January 2025, President Donald Trump announced a freeze on USAID spending and a review of its programs around the world. The UN responded with an appeal for $6 billion in further funding for Sudan.
The tough funding crisis doesn't mean that crises in places like Sudan disappear. And I refuse to believe that behind these challenges, we collectively have lost our ability to reach out and support those in direst need. And so, yes, maybe it does feel strange to be launching an appeal on this scale at this moment. But would it not feel even stranger for us not to be launching an appeal at this scale when the needs are so great?
But the review of USAID was just the start. Despite protests, in March it was announced that more than 80% of its programs were cancelled, gone. For good. What's left will be administered by the State Department. That said, about 1/3 of its foreign aid-related grants have also been eliminated. So another $4.4 billion that won't reach those in need. But the victims of famine, disease, and war don't care about numbers. They need help. Even before the US started pulling back its international aid programs, there still wasn't enough to go around.
The consequences will be especially devastating for vulnerable people around the world.
In Sudan, the policy remains disaster limitation.
You know, they're not building schools and hospitals here. They're helping people in dire need. So I think the UN have said something like nearly 2/3 of the population in Sudan are in need of humanitarian support, and the US were making a significant contribution towards that. So yes, no, without it, I mean, you know, a number of agencies have said lives will be lost.
Which all goes to show how decisions made thousands of kilometers away from a conflict zone can impact lives. The Center for Global Development is a think tank. It estimates more than 30% of Sudan's aid comes from, or rather came from, the US. So other countries will now be asked to step up. The United Kingdom has announced it's doubling its aid to Sudan and Sudanese refugees to close to $300 million. But the UK just cut back on its global aid program to spend more on its military. So while that Sudan increase is going to stay, it's going to be tough finding much more. Other big givers include countries like Germany and Sweden, Canada and Japan. Another problem, cash shortage or no cash shortage, is that convoys like this are being stopped and looted by armed men. The banking system is in crisis. Lawlessness is crippling deliveries.
We've been pushing for months to get to these communities. We've got convoys coming from Port Sudan going to Kadugli, to Dilling. Also other convoys trying to reach North Darfur. The message is these convoys have to reach their final destination. We have to get to these populations. We're asking everybody involved along those roads to give us free passage so that we can assist these populations.
Life for these displaced Sudanese families is precarious enough. The civil war on its own has seen to that. But a massive reduction in aid is devastating. Organizations like Doctors Without Borders say they're doing what they can, but it wants to see a wide-scale humanitarian response. That means mostly more money, a lot more money.